In 1984, industrial music legends Cabaret Voltaire released Sensoria on the Some Bizarre record label. It was their first single from their sixth album, Micro-Phonies. The song mixed driving beats and multicultural rhythms over a winding soundtrack and a hypnotic vocal. The Cabs, as they were known, never looked for fame in the traditional sense. Instead, they just thought it was important for you to listen. For them, how things were presented was just as important, believing it was about your takeaway from the experience as a whole that mattered most. Peter Kerr, a pioneering filmmaker from southwest England, had been making films for the band since the 70s, yet the music video he made for Sensoria went on to be recognized as one of the most important music videos of all time. In a special episode of Destroy, called Scene by Scene, we talked to film director Peter Kerr, the Up and Over camera rig designer Tony Hill, and Cabaret Voltaire co-founder Stephen Malander about how the video was made. Thanks everybody for joining today. It's amazing to have you all here. Let's begin with where the storyline or the idea came from. Maybe Mal, you want to start?
For us, we were coming from a world of cut-up, so it was very William Burroughs. What we were doing with film was trying to mirror what we were doing with sound, which was the idea of looping and processing and repeating.
Right. Peter, what do you think?
The thought process was, what did I think Sensoria meant? And I just thought it feels like it's kind of, you're a bit disorientated, discombobulated, but it's a fun place to be in.
The words were about extremes and about a sort of hedonism, but also about dealing with the times that we were in. So it was about that juxtaposition of northern lives and tough urban lives, along with this idea of pushing our senses and idea of indulgences.
But also I wanted to experiment with editing, where the editing would be almost part of the percussion of the music. And I wanted a mixture of weirdness coming from the guy's body language, but also there's a bit of humor in there. And I wanted to put those two things together.
What about the famous Up and Over crane or camera rig?
A few weeks before Mal and Richard gave me the track, I'd seen Tony's exhibit at the Salter Lane campus in Sheffield. And the thing that struck me was his Up and Over machine.
Tony, why don't you just explain a little bit how this camera rig, this crane came about?
Yeah, I made a film called Downside Up. It's a sort of a home movie in a way. And I made a falling over slowly machine. And I was filming somebody on this and turning the camera sideways. So that led me to make a very crude version of the crane. And then I filmed a few shots with that and going right the way over the 180-degree move. And it appeared to go through the ground. And I thought, this is interesting. I should do something with it. So I then made Downside Up.
And I thought, it was just marvelous, but to put it into an industrial setting with hard rhythmic music would be really interesting.
So that whole idea of flipping from one world to another and disorientation, that effect worked very well in terms of tying parts of it together.
The other thing that I thought was really amazing was the rig itself. It's very low tech, and people here in LA are still trying to figure out how to make that move.
I still keep getting asked by people how it was done.
Something that makes this video really unique for me is the camera work.
In music, of course, repetition seems to be absolutely vital. And so there's bits in this animation where we repeated shots just to fill that particular phrase in the music.
Right.
And there was always a thing rattling around my head. How much do you emphasize the dance element to the music? And so I thought it was really important to show that you can actually dance to a Cabaret Voltaire record. Then he went on, so now we should show the band dancing too. Show Mal and Richard dancing.
There's a Gilbert and George vibe to it, where we become these marionette puppets, slightly awkward, slightly self-deprecating as well.
What I love is that cinematically it touches on a lot of references.
in some respects. So I'm quite happy people taking what they want from it. Some of the things that were there are obviously very much part of us. It's very Sheffield. It's got a metallic thing. It's got the famous Tinsley cooling towers. It's an urban thing, but it's also got the mad African party vibe, people dancing, Wise Blood and the Preacher and Night of the Hunter and all those things. So there was a dark gothic symbolism that was also thrown into that mix. So it was very much of the time to use those things and have Oti, who was the mad priest in it, like a strange Americanism overlaid into this British thing. It's beautifully multicultural, but we didn't go out to go, let's make a really groundbreaking, weird video. Let's do something we really want. And we don't really care how people take it.
So what about the production? There seemed to be a lot of different locations. Was this all planned out?
We had a guerrilla approach to filming.
Sometimes it was just me and a color camera. It was the process of just seeing how much variety was needed. It was just a matter of like, well, okay, so you got the old power plant, you got the cooling towers, the preacher healing the guy. That was just around the corner from my house. I drove by this other place that's just like a bland industrial warehouse thing, so let's shoot something outside of that. Everything was like a reaction to what you just did the day before. And there was a fantastic shot that we didn't put in of the guy playing the preacher. He walked up and down the street where I lived, just shouting random stuff, within the little girl with a sign. Right. And about 10 kids came out and started to skip and follow him around.
This is the bit for me that's so important, is it's just absolutely chock-a-block and riddled with cultural references. So I can remember a lot of the interiors were shot at the Royal Infirmary Hospital, which is in Sheffield, which had been decommissioned and been knocked down. But more significantly, it had just been used for the BBC drama series Threads, where a nuclear bomb landed on Sheffield. But I can't remember where individual bits of this reshot footage came from, but we were always constantly filming from TV. Richard and myself particularly were always saw ourselves as children, of the television generation. So there's always that idea of viewing from the outside.
Right, I love that. It's very Marshall McLuhan.
I mean, I would imagine a record company person or someone who's choosing videos for Top of Pops would look at this thing and go, that's not even a music video. But for me, it was great to start introducing these different elements into the music video industry.
So let's talk about MTV and the reaction to the video in America.
The main television shows in England at the time, they just weren't interested in this music video or in Cabaret Voltaire as musicians. Meanwhile, in America for MTV, it was in their top 20 requests for 7 months. Right. America kids and MTV were really embracing it. It was just marvelous.
For us, we never thought about it in terms of British TV. We just thought about something that we wanted to make films. We never really knew what the response was going to be like. But for us, we loved the form, the idea of putting music and film together. Those were our two great loves. So we just loved the form, and we wanted to do something that wasn't traditional. And we just thought if you just do something that you want to do and stick with it, eventually people recognise it.
I'm amazed that it's had this life and have a new life after A$AP Rocky and the one for the fashion house. The Rag and Bone set brought it back into people's consciousness.
I guess the testament to it is that people make pilgrimages now to that church to see where Sensoria was filmed, because it's still there. So people actually go to that church to go, oh my God, this is where Sensoria is.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I love that. What a great way to end.
Gents, thank you.
You can listen to the latest podcast episode of Destroy the Influence of Punk with video director Peter Kerr wherever you listen and download. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Instagram at Destroy Punk Podcast.